If you really are serious about breaking into it, it's a year plus long commitment.
Even though like you're prospecting, you're getting people to chase after you. You've done north of 1,000 transactions yourself, over 300 million in sales volume, and you run 12 farms. There's this quote that I found that you like to say, "This business is built on hitting singles." What does that mean to you?
Same idea, like I think any business that's gonna be of any worth long term is built. I say a lot of times brick by brick by brick. I went from like 50 some million the year before to 34 million last year. The overall farming campaigns yearly 10x is a real rough number. When I really hyper analyze it, I had one farm a couple years ago that was like a 433% return. I had one condo project where I did a video for one unit that somehow someone on the board saw that, so it got posted to an owner's page. And within a 2-year period, that turned into probably 10, 11, and 12 closed transactions.
If you were going to break into a new building or new neighborhood, what would you kind of do? Are there like certain numbers or things that you look at to evaluate a market? You've done north of 1,000 transactions yourself, over 300 million in sales volume. And I was curious because there's this quote that I found that you like to say, "This business is built on hitting singles." What does that mean to you?
Same idea, like I think any business that's gonna be of any worth long term is built. I say a lot of times brick by brick by brick. I think you have to have a good foundation. I think you have to have good. It's like in sports, you take care of the fundamentals to be able to play sports well. I think it's the same in business, and then it's a step at a time. It's a step at a time. We certainly can hit home runs from time to time, but I think my business anyway is just built on really one conversation at a time, one relationship at a time, and being available consistently. I think consistency is the key. So I think that to me is probably wherever you found that. It's probably that idea. The player in baseball that would hit singles is someone who's more consistent. So consistency to me.
Nice. And I heard you talk about farming, and it kind of changed the way I thought about it. Because I'm very like attraction based. I've kind of moved away from like chasing like business and leads. And the way you said it was very interesting. It's like farming is actually a form of attraction. It's a way of, even though like you're prospecting, you're getting people to chase after you. Is that correct? In a way?
Yeah, I think so. I think. For me, I played music professionally for years. I still play a lot, and I think a lot of the terminology that we use in real estate is a function of words that we choose to describe the activities.
Yeah.
Where like in music, we have the names for notes and we have the names for chords, but it's really the sound that's the most important thing. So you can call it an F or you can call it a G augmented, but what does that sound like is the most important part. So for me, the concept is, we talk about it as calling it farming, but the goal is really just to put out material that we think is helpful and valuable and to put it out in a professional way so that hopefully that's interesting and we'll get the phone to ring. My coach, who I've worked with for, I think 14 years now, describes that when he's speaking, he'll be in a room of a bunch of agents and he'll say, okay, how many of you guys drove by the Busy Bee gas station today on the way in? And the whole room, of course, would raise their hand, or most people, because some people didn't notice the gas station. But then he said, okay, how many of you actually stopped for gas? And it would be, of course, maybe 2 or 3 people would raise their hand, and he talks about marketing from that mindset that you want to be available. You want people to be aware of you, of course, but people don't all day, every day have the need for our services. So,
Yep.
Just to consistently have people aware and to be aware of us for the right reasons. I think that's one that I think gets missed a lot. Well, or it gets it is. I think a lot of people in real estate now. There's certainly a lot of people that are trying to be recognized. Social media, I think, plays into this. Or trying to be recognized, but are you being recognized for the right reasons?
Yeah, I think that's like a big thing is like there's a lot of agents out there who are like on social media putting up like looks good, but then you actually look at their numbers, you're like, are you still selling? Are you producing? But that's kind of a different topic.
Yeah, and yeah, it's about the farming idea for calling it that is just to consistently. We can't. I don't have the budget or the time or energy to reach the amount of people like Nike could reach. So
Yep.
what can I thoughtfully afford and will matter. So who do I want to be aware of me and the team and our services?
And you run 12 farms now, but kind of speaking to like the people who look at farming, they're like, isn't that expensive to do? Like, can we quickly run over like the numbers, like maybe a quick cost of one and like the ROI to kind of talk about like why it's worth it?
Yeah, I think it's gotten tricky, and it depends on um, how granular you want to get with the analysis.
Yeah.
Um, because the activities have changed somewhat over the years. I started doing farming activities 11, 12 years ago with just one farm. I probably wouldn't still be doing it if the phone hadn't rung. I think it was one mailer, and I got a listing call off the first mailer. And so I was like, oh man, cool. The home run, right? We're all looking for the silver bullet. And the activities have changed over time because of the internet, more different platforms, cost of mail, cost of mailing pieces,
Yep.
all those things. So the things that I measure, very, very generally speaking, it's been consistently a 10x return. The overall farming campaigns yearly, 10x is a real rough number. When I really hyper analyze it, I had one farm a couple years ago that was like a 433% return, but that was just because of the price point and the condo project I was doing, and but it depends on what you want to throw in as your cost. Is it just the mail? Is it also the photos or any videos you do on the listings that you do get inside of a farm that you turn around and market, that we know add to the value of the farming campaign?
Yep.
So how do you value that? I think some people would value that or account for that differently than maybe is that part of farming or not. Last year was the first year that I threw in the costs of photos and videos. I took in any listing that we got in a farm. I went ahead and added photos and videos cost into that, not just looking at the mail, to try to get a reasonable amount of how it was all running. And that was a fun exercise because it took the numbers to like 6% last year, which was a down year anyway for me. I went from like 50 some million the year before to 34 million last year. So if you just look at the mailing part of the campaign, it's easily 10x. If you add in the cost of photos and videos, it reduces it to like maybe 6, which helped us make some adjustments on like remembering to make sure we're charging enough for our services. Trying to find some ways to get more efficient with video, all those kind of things. But yeah, I can't. If you've done research on it, you see, I'm a big fan. It's a big driver of our business.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is like you think about it through a different lens than I think most people look at it from the outside looking in. And that probably comes from just the fact that you've been doing it for so long. So I, I find that very intriguing. Like, for example, just the way you think of it as like a campaign, it's not just one. So I kind of want to talk a little bit about that because I think that's a very interesting topic. Is it's not just mail. Like, you're doing a lot of different things over an extended period of time. So if we were to look at it kind of almost like a pizza or a pie, what are those kind of like different slices, or how do you break down the campaigns that you do?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it started um, over time. The ratio of I work in a market where we sell a lot of second home investment type properties. So a lot of absentee owners.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was a pretty unsophisticated campaign to start with 10, 12 years ago, whenever it was, because it really was just mail. But I think it was probably a little more effective back then, or it can be a little more effective in my market because absentee owners aren't thinking about their real estate in my market all the time. They don't, and so when you give them some information about that asset, it's a little easier to garner their attention than if you're sending something to their house where they live about the new pizza place opening up, down the street. Not that we would send that, but it's monthly mail. We're continuing to try to see what owners value online. How can we get them online? Can we get them to email? How can we get email addresses so we can do some email marketing? I have the same approach with email marketing. I don't want to spam you to death. I don't want to ask you to marry me until we've dated. So, but what can I do if you do want to? What can I offer that you would want to sign up for, that you would want to give me an email address that can help you keep track of your neighborhood or your condo project? So, a lot of agents use e-alert systems, for lack of a better word. Like, if you have a buyer that's looking for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, they put them on a drip. You can do the same thing with sellers. So, hey, seller, if you want to keep up with the value of 123 Main Street, text us your email address, send us your email address, and we'll sign you up for this. And it's a good way to keep up with pricing. I think that worked really well when the market was hot and when the market was active, because if you have pricing constantly changing almost weekly, then they're more interested in receiving that information quickly. I think now we're more settled into, you don't need to talk to or update people on value as much, because it doesn't change as much. I remember when I first got into it, a buddy of mine said, he says, "Oh yeah, I have a real estate guy." He says, "And it's good. I want to hear from him, but I don't need to hear from him every week. I don't need to hear from him every month, but I need to hear from him when there's something, that I need to know." So I'm challenging myself right now to just adjust to the pace of the market. What does a seller really need, or an owner of real estate really need to know about values? And it's just a slower pace of messaging right now.
Yeah, I kind of follow the approach. I don't know if you heard of a company called Axios.
Yeah.
So, they're, for anyone else, they're a big like newsletter company, built to like $500 million just off newsletters. And they have this saying, they also have a book that makes content that's worthy of being read, or worthy of being consumed.
Yeah, I dig the idea. I like their formatting too, because they're real thoughtful about, here's a headline, or here's part of something. If you want the rest of it, click here and dive into this. I think their stuff's real easy to digest. We're thinking about those same kind of things. How can we make this? How can we serve it up to you so in a way that is easy to digest, and if you want it or not, it's easy to get what you want. If not, move on.
So, I guess first question really quickly, the e-alerts for sellers, is that like a tool like HomeBot, or is that manual?
No, it's any of these, I think most most MLSs have it. I think companies like Boomtown offer it. So it's just the idea that if you live in a neighborhood, um, and you care to keep up with values or what your home or your condo may be worth, we'll set you up for the same activities that maybe a buyer would be looking for. And you know how those things are so customizable. If someone wants to just receive just the solds, then we'll send you just the solds. If you want to see the other activities of like new listings, price changes, pendings, if you really like to keep up with the market like that, which some people do, we'll do that. A lot of those systems, it's customizable, the pace of it. So what I found is when someone reaches out and says, "Oh yeah, sign me up for that. I'd like to get the information monthly," then cool. Maybe they just are interested once a month to look at an email or whatever. If someone says, "Yeah, send me stuff," and anytime something happens instantly or daily, we're keeping track of it. That should be a little bit of a red flag to us that, hey, here's someone who maybe is more interested in seeing what their current value is. Maybe that's someone who is thinking about selling. And so it just gets them into the ecosystem, kind of, so to speak.
Nice. And are you finding that's kind of one of your best like strategies or tools to kind of capture the lead? Is something like that as a seller?
It's still more about coming from a spirit of being helpful, really. If you, I bill it sort of as, there's plenty of inaccurate information out there, especially with value. And for me, I like that it sort of plays into the concept of, okay, well, I can offer you something that's extremely accurate. It comes straight from our MLS system, straight from our Realtor system, however you want to market it. But here's an accurate way to keep up with value. This isn't the price your neighbor said he sold his house for. This isn't the price, she said she sold her condo for. It's the actual price when it closes, the date, what goes into public records. So just in a spirit of trying to provide some accurate information, here you go. I do think that's the long version of, yeah, probably that helps with lead capture, because I think it just plays into the messaging that we're just serious about the business, and we want to give good advice. We want to be accurate with the data that we do put out. So hopefully that keeps people's attention and they want that information more regularly. When the email comes or the text comes, whatever it is, maybe they're more likely to open it because they begin to rely on it as a good source of information. Like you follow Axios, you start to trust it. So it's starting to establish some trust that we know what we're doing. We're being honest with you. One of the ways I sort of stumbled into video to try to support the farming campaigns was the beginning of COVID. And I put out one video and did something like this where, we record the screen, show some charts, and I wanted to follow it for myself to see what would happen with the market. But so I turned it into, well, let's start to update some people. And I started to do it weekly, and remembered getting a lot of blowback from agents specifically saying, "No, Craig, don't say that. You don't talk bad about the market. Try to find ways to talk good about the market." And I don't think I was trying to talk good or bad about the market. I was just trying to talk about what the market is. And if you're informed, then you can make a decision, because sometimes you may be buying, sometimes you may be selling. So it's just about trying to provide good information. The e-alerts help with that.
Nice. And how have you found the response with the videos that you've done?
It's mixed. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up with that.
Yeah, it's like
a lot of good. I think it's interesting. Just like we know that there's so many different personalities. So when I sit down and record one of those like 15-minute market analysis with data and charts and I ramble on too long, I'll get an email or a text message from an engineer type who will say, "Oh man, that's such good information." And then when I do a video that's real simple, you might have someone else who's less analytical go, "Oh, I finally watched that video. Your other videos were too long." So we're just trying to balance that. I fell a little bit into the trap last year of, since YouTube is a place that I decided to host the videos, I sort of fell into the trap then of becoming a YouTuber to a point, or thinking about YouTube from a YouTuber point of view instead of using it as a tool just to host the videos and put out the content that I was interested in putting out. You sort of get drawn into, oh, what is the algorithm like? What does the subscriber want to hear? And we're just sort of making a shift right now on that one so that we stay focused.
That's very interesting. I like that because you're thinking more towards the consumer, but then also when it comes to like the messaging, having those different messages for the different personalities, it's a tough thing to like weigh. It's like, how do you like send almost both in a way to appeal to both?
Yeah, I'm trying to do a little more planning so that, the challenge is to take the complicated information, right, or the complicated part of it, and make it as simple as you can. And if I could, that's the constant challenge. Especially, I like to look at some of the data and to analyze it, to understand where we are, to be able to give better advice. But I also can talk too much, and I can also overanalyze things. All right, I tend to do that, so I'm trying to take more time, bounce it off my marketing director to where we're a little more concise, simple, and then maybe like Axios, find ways to give short bursts of the highlights, and then, hey, if you want to go deeper, go here.
That's actually funny that you said that. I was going to say, like, what if you did something like that where it's like you almost have a shortened version, whether it's written or video, and you're like, hey, if you want the deeper version, you could watch or read this one instead.
Yeah. I think that's the way to go. I still don't ever want to get caught. I was caught up a lot in it again, like last year. I don't want to get too much caught up in thinking what will the audience like, so to speak. I just want to be more about, okay, here's what I think you need to know. Yeah. But I do need to continue to just polish the presentation.
Nice. So going down the path of like the communication, like what to send, Axios and that thought for a moment, like for example, I've found, at least for example, like in Tampa, like some big cities, there's some things that you can kind of share what's going on, like big developments, big changes that are like coming to the city. But then in other markets, like vacation rental markets or like smaller markets with like population of like 11,000, there's not sometimes those big developments. So I was just curious, like if there's some things that you found that have worked for you, or like some things that you're looking into.
Yes, good question. Good timing too. I feel like a lot of the farming activities, a lot of my marketing is pretty tedious, because it's so specific and it's very bottom of the funnel, so to speak, type. We'll send information just to this neighborhood, to this condo project instead of the whole condo market. But fortunately, our little part of Florida is growing up pretty fast. So there are a lot of things to talk about on infrastructure updates. I can rattle off, just in the last 3 weeks, Top Golf was announced. Dolly Parton's making a major investment here of 60,000 square foot dinner theater venue, like pirate themed thing. There's a 27-acre medical research hospital coming with the first support buildings being built. There are a couple roads that are coming in. new communities, the bar entertainment venue Tootsie's that's big in Nashville. They had a place down here for a long time. They just made a major investment moving into a bigger building. So I need to do more of those things. If you go and look at my YouTube channel, we do a lot of property tours because part of what we offer is, if you are gonna choose us to market, here are all the things we do, and so video is one of those. So you find a lot of the property tours on there. I need more, and we're thinking about right now and have planned more information that's a little more evergreen. I'm lacking a lot of that right now, and that's going to be a big focus for this year.
Nice. I can send you like some thoughts on that. Like Ken Pozek does a lot of those coming soon
I
style.
love him, man. Yeah.
Those are great, like development, and you can take that, and you can also take the Axios style and put that in like your newsletter too.
Yeah. We do a lot of that already, but we're so specific with it that I need to think a little wider and again, more evergreen. I like Ken's stuff a lot. I started the property tours were a real simplistic, dumbed down version of what Brad McCallum was doing.
Oh, nice.
That's sort of how I got into it, and then I was looking for something else that would last longer and have more shelf life, just because producing video content can get time consuming and expensive. So I got turned on to Ken a few years ago. Yeah, I'm a big fan.
Yeah, both of them do things that like unique and different, like kind of talking about like Brad and yours, like you get a lot of listings from, like everybody wants, how do I get listings? Like you get a lot of listings from all the marketing you do and the content that you put out. And one of the big things that sellers say is like, what are you going to do to like sell my house? Or like essentially what am I paying you money for, in a way?
Yeah.
And Brad, for example, has like a good reason for that. And excuse was the wrong word to say, but like he has a good proof that he shows. And I think what you do really well with some of your marketing is you prove before they even talk to you, like what you do to sell houses. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's a pretty different business, buyer and seller side. Again, I started 20 years ago, so I can remember at the beginning, if someone was buying, they would come in, they would call you and come into the office and sit down and say, okay, I want a 3-bedroom, 2-bath with a white picket fence. What do you have? Because they didn't know, they didn't know what was for sale. They couldn't research what was for sale still. We were on the cusp of, the internet was happening, but it wasn't, Zillow wasn't, I don't know if it existed 20 years ago. It certainly wasn't as big as it is now, but we were still on the buyer side. The good agents had the knowledge, had the information. On the seller side, it was very similar to now. We just have more places to market and to advertise. And so I think trying to put as much good, trying to take one individual property for sale that we're marketing and do as well with that as we can. People are watching that. I've had plenty of calls from people in the neighborhood that said, hey, we picked you because we like how you write the descriptions. You don't just put 3-bedroom, 2-bath, white picket fence. You write some thoughtful descriptions. We like that. We're going to use that. I've had plenty of calls. Hey, if we work with you, are you going to do one of those videos? I had one condo project where I did a video for one unit that somehow someone on the board saw that, so it got posted to an owner's page, and within a 2-year period that turned into probably 10, 11, and 12 closed transactions, whatever the dollar volume was, because the video got tossed around. So yeah, I think trying to figure out more ways to it's 2 steps, package up the presentation, so the photos, the videos, the 3D tours, whatever it is, but where are you going to put that? How are you going to put it in places consistently? Because you can't do everything.
Yeah.
So, where can you put it consistently so people consistently see it, and then maybe they see that you do good work, and that leads to it, and then maybe some of the video content like this, because then people start to get a feel for you, and the people that like you, you are starting to build a relationship and a little bit of trust early on, especially if you're authentic.
Yeah.
And you're going to have people that don't call you because they don't like you, and that's fine, because you probably wouldn't have been able to help them anyway.
And I think all of this kind of speaks to like the marketer in you, where it's like it's not one thing that necessarily is like the secret pill or whatever that's gonna like set the dominoes. It's all the things that you're kind of doing that start to bring in and start to create this like environment for people feel comfortable reaching out to you.
Yeah, and it's, that back to the question earlier of, what's the ROI of that? Um, we're working on one image right now that just talks about how all the marketing is integrated. And so it all feeds off of each other. So you have, this link appears in so many different places and it links to something else. And so you have a website that hosts some things, but that, everything starts to work together to give more exposure. And just so, we know a buyer may get turned on to a video, another buyer may get turned on to a pretty picture, another buyer may get exposed to something by reading a blog. So it all matters. And I think back to the hitting singles question earlier, it's just about trying to, whatever it is that we're trying to do, we're staying consistent with that. My marketing director is really helping me with that right now, because I'm the one, I like to experiment a lot. And she's helping me, let's execute the plan and keep the things consistent. And if we are going to try something, fine, let's talk about it. Let's vet it instead of just jumping right into it. Cause my nature over the years was always to just, see the new shiny object. Well, let's play with it for a minute. We're trying to be a little more thoughtful about it to make sure we're consistent.
Nice. Just really quick, because I'm sure some people are probably wondering in their head, like what between the two, like what are a few of the things that like you say consistent on no matter what, and then what are the few things that you're probably experimenting on in the next like year or so?
We're focused on some of the important farming activities are important for us to stay consistent on the timing of those things. We're also look to be consistent on the presentation of whatever it is we're doing, and it changes over time, but whatever we decide is important with presenting the property for sale, we want that to be consistent. This is where, again, my marketing director, Melissa, is really helping me with this, because, anything from thumbnails to print material to maybe even formatting of the video to certainly the quality of the video, all those things we want, however someone comes in the door, so to speak.
Yep.
You want them to feel that they're in the brand.
Yeah.
The stuff I want to experiment with, this year for me is more about what we're talking about remembering the important, just consistent fundamentals. I am playing around a little bit with some AI to help with some of the day-to-day things. I want to keep my finger on the pulse of that. I'm not a huge social media person, but we want to make sure we have a solid presence there. We're making a few tweaks to that we want to play with. We posted something the other day that upped the engagement a little bit, so we want to do a little bit more of that. Yeah, it's consistency this year, man. It's less experimenting and more just executing.
Yeah, and I want to get into the market in a second, because there is that like question about this next year. But right before we do that, I was just curious, because a lot of people, they want to break into markets, whatever it is. It's like, I want to get into luxury. I want to do this. And
Yeah,
you've gotten like market share, like I think you said like 30% in like one building, like with all the different farms. Do you think doing something like farming, for example, like getting that activeness, like it's a good way to break into markets? Or like what's your thoughts, like if you wanted to break into a new building or a neighborhood, etc.?
I mean, you just have, I think there are a lot of things, the basics that are probably coaches have probably, your 25 activities to do to start in a market. I think you just have to start working in a market, and you can't expect to do 50% market share your first year. You just can't. You're not the expert in a market if you just decided today I'm gonna work in luxury. Well, good for you. You can take some photos and maybe borrow someone's listing for a second, but it takes more than that. It if you're gonna, like for me, if you're gonna work in the condo market, especially right now in Florida, right, with all the state laws and the insurance issues and everything that's going on in that market, there are a lot of things to learn. And I think there are a lot of luxury. Everybody wants to get into it just because of the price point. But if you're getting into the luxury market just because of the price point, I don't think you're going to do well. You've got to understand the people that work in those markets. You've got to understand the nuances of what those people expect. I'm a big fan, and I think if looking backwards, I think my career has probably progressed this way. I'm 51, so I guess I started when I was 30, and when I was 30, a lot of us were doing the same things in life. We were maybe buying our first home, maybe some had already bought their first home, maybe someone were selling their first home, maybe someone was moving up, people were getting married, people were having babies, and you were in that. And if you were dealing with real estate in that, it worked well. And then a couple of years later, those people were moving up, those people were selling, those people might start to think about a second home. Well, you were too, naturally, in your progression. And not everybody is on the same path, for sure. There's 25-year-old YouTubers now buying luxury property, so it's a different world. But I think I think if you're going to get into a market, and I talk to this too, to younger people than me all the time, you can get into luxury, sure, at 25 years old, 30, and dominate. But you better really be good at it and understand it and focus on it. And that just takes time. You can speed up, the days and weeks and years by how many hours you put into it a day. But I mean, really, really get into learning the job. If real estate is a practice, just like law is a practice, just like medicine is a practice, even though we may not be viewed the same as attorneys and doctors, but know the job, be able to talk about contracts and every single clause in the agreement, know what all these little nuances of a real estate transaction mean. And then people, you start getting good at something, people start to gravitate towards that because they need help.
Yeah. And I think there's something to be said to, like, for example, what you've done is like making like your own market and like becoming the go-to person in the market. Like, if you want to be known for it, then, as you said, study it, be active in it, know it.
Yeah.
If you're going to give like a checklist or like a few things that someone could do, like if you were going to break into a new building or a new neighborhood, what would you kind of do?
Yeah, I think I'll give you the list, but I think all this, getting the information breeds confidence.
Yep.
Because if someone asks you a question about something and you know what you're talking about, your answer is going to be that, you're going to come across a lot better. So say a neighborhood. first thing you do is go look at every single house that's for sale and start to get familiar with the product. I talked to an agent that was real experienced here. He'd been 20, 25 years in the business, opening another office in another market close by. And he says, oh yeah, I'm just spending a lot of time over there learning the math. And so it is that. What are the numbers of all the numbers that are important to talk about in real estate? And if you don't know those, learn those first.
What are those if someone doesn't know them?
You start
Like
with
turnover rate, like stuff like that.
I think you start with some of the fundamentals. What's days on market doing in that neighborhood right now? Real basic. How many houses sold last month? How many houses sold 2 months ago? How many houses sold a year ago? How many houses are under contract? I mean, the real basic stuff. How many houses are for sale? Who built the houses in there? And I'm thinking of a neighborhood right now that had 2 builders over time. And I only know it because I lived it, and I lived while this was all going on. But some simple research for someone new could see that all of the homes built in this phase were one builder. All the homes in this phase were a different builder. There's something, that's important, especially in that neighborhood, because values are different. Yep. I guess if you're trying to break into a farm and if you're talking about the analysis of which one to get into, that's a different story. But if you've decided that and you're just trying to get in here, then yeah, go look at the real estate, spend time in there. I love hearing, I listened to Glenda Baker 5 or 6 years ago talk about what she used to do. And I think when she got started, I think she was a single mom with a young child and would drive into this luxury community and park at the pool and walk around the neighborhood every day so that people would, this was like, guerrilla marketing, right? She's in there. So people just see her. And then she would go visit every home that came in for sale. She would go preview it. She didn't have a customer, but she would take a card and she would leave it there. And thank you for letting me preview it. And then she would drive around again and drive around. This is, I think, even before she was really doing a lot of video or anything. But, there's perception has a lot to do with it, which I think is interesting in our business. But I think I don't know that you have to go that far with it, but spend a lot of time knowing the information of what's going on in that real estate market. Is that market trending up or down? Is there something happening that affects that neighborhood? Is a new grocery store opening up? Is there a Top Golf opening close to the condo project? Know that. Talk to some people there. I think it's, if you're talking residential, why do you live here? What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? And compile notes and take notes and learn about it so that when you do have the opportunity to talk to someone about it, you have some things to say. From there, next steps, if certainly open houses are a great way for younger agents to break in, or even an experienced agent to break in somewhere so that they're seen. That's a whole nother podcast of how to make that successful. But if you don't have a listing in there, get someone in your company that has a listing. I've even got phone calls, interestingly enough, now from agents at other companies asking to sit in my open house, which blows my mind. I appreciated I appreciated that. Try to do that and try to be seen as much as you can. I think the other things we talked about earlier, if you really are serious about breaking into it, it's a year plus long commitment. So have the resources of whatever activities you are going to execute available so that if you are going to mail, make sure you're ready to mail for at least a year. If you were going to record some videos, start to figure that out. Maybe it's creating a web page on your website if you have one for that community. Maybe it's a social page for that community if there already isn't one. Maybe not going that far since you're new, but maybe participating in some groups on social if you can get. I know you can't get into those owners groups all the time, but just learning about it, talking about it, getting
Yeah.
invested. You know, if you're going to really be invested in it and you're really going to help people sell or buy there, then know what it is.
Yeah. That's good. I had Glenda on a little earlier, and she talked about like walking around the neighborhoods. She had a binder with all the different houses in the neighborhood, basically like pre-CRM days.
Yeah, she knew her stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, I mean that's really doing it, I think, and look at her now. That's the kind of work that that's the kind of work I don't think um, the
Most of the
majority of
newer
real.
agents.
Yeah, no, well, I think there's some good newer agents, but I think it takes that kind of work at the beginning, at least. You know, if you kept a binder of like, okay, Joe and Mary, they're not moving until their child gets out of college, which is 3 years away. Well, you know, you make a plan. Oh, they're getting ready to get a divorce. Oh, that you know,
Yeah.
but all those things take time, and if you have the mindset that it takes time, and all those things will matter, just like I like the word farming for the idea that you're planting seeds and you're growing something
Yeah.
and you reap the benefits later. And some years you have a bad year, and some years you kill it, and that's what it is.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to the famous like Steve Jobs quote of like you can't connect the dots moving forwards, but you can connect the dots looking backwards.
Right?
It takes time to like really build up a name in an area. You might not necessarily know all the dots that are gonna make it work, but all the things start to come together.
Yeah, yeah, and all those things matter. I mean, if you as much information is out there on the internet, I think, and even AI coming and people worrying about, you know, authentic information and real information. That helps us in a way of being able to, if you're going to just provide good, clean, real information, accurate information, then you can become trusted, and people tell other people about that. And don't be afraid to go really deep, you know, and really understand, really learn something. You know, yeah, you know, I think there's probably tons of coaches who have given the example of, you know, you're not supposed to say when someone says, how's the market? I think one mindset is, oh, it's great, everything's so busy, because we're supposed to exude that I'm so busy. And, you know, I don't think it's that. I think, how's the market? Well, which market are you talking about? You know, are you talking about detached single family in Panama City Beach under 500,000? Are you talking about condos, Gulfront condos over $1 million? Because those are very different, and I can tell you why they're different. And you know, which one are you talking about? And I think when you start to know things like that, that certainly helps.
Yeah, and a lot of what you said kind of comes into the point of like one, know your stuff, get really deep, but then also you have to be consistent. You have to give it time for it to play out. You can't just expect it within 1 month. Really quickly, because you mentioned it earlier, are there like certain numbers or things that you look at to evaluate a market?
To get into one?
Yeah.
Yeah. I probably could stand to analyze that more now, but I look at, it's hard for me right now running 11, 12 farms to get away from, to put a farm, to not continue, because since I understand that it can take time and I can understand markets fluctuate, you know, if I've invested 2, 3, 4 years of time and energy into something, it's really hard at this point to go, okay, I didn't have a sale in there last year. It was a 0% ROI. Let's throw it away. That's tough for me to do. I have done it recently, neighborhood by neighborhood, condo building to condo building, which are the most of what I do, or Gulfront houses. You know, what are the things that are affecting those markets? There are external factors affecting those markets, like Maybe it's an older neighborhood where a newer neighborhood is getting momentum. 1 year a condo project is going through some major repairs. So if there are fewer sales in there, then, maybe that's not, maybe you have an understanding of it. I guess when I'm deciding to get into a newer market, the most recent addition to my repertoire was after so many years of farming all these communities, I never had really specifically done Gulfront, which became sort of laughable to me that why hadn't I done that earlier? So it was simply replicating what we already do and going into a market that I'm familiar with and had done plenty of business in, but just hadn't applied the same things to it. If I was brand new to farming, especially the first one, I think you have to spend much more time analyzing to give yourself a better shot. So some of the basics are, is there one agent that dominates the market? Okay, let me understand why. Not suggesting that you don't go into a market because there is an agent dominating, because I think competition's good. But what's your value proposition going to be versus that person? And how are you going to stack up? How are you going to compete when the seller calls both of you? How well do you think you'll do with that? Where is that neighborhood going, or over the next year, 2 or 3? Is this something you're going to be excited about? Is it something not? I think that's a basic one a lot of people overlook. Do I like it? Do I like this neighborhood or not? That comes off when we're talking to people. I think a big one that isn't talked about enough and probably doesn't come up in any data is simply proximity. I think it amazes me still that even with the internet, that people still have some sense that, the agent that lives close by or whose office is right around the corner or whose office is on site somehow can sell my house better than the person who's 2 miles away or 5 miles away. And, certainly there's advantages for those on-site offices for buyer traffic, but if you know how to market something, you could be in, 5 states away and do it right to a point.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a big thing. It's like just because they live in the area doesn't necessarily mean they're the best fit for it.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily think we're going in, like, I don't even think at all it's going to be anything like 2008, but you had kind of a shift in your business during that because the whole economy was really bad back then, and you went from doing like 40 or 50 deals, you said, to doing 5 deals, and you realized that you didn't at the time know how to run a business effectively back then.
Sure.
I think there's a lot of people who just got into real estate that might realize these next couple of years that they may not have a business at the time now, and they're going to have to go through that learning that you went through. So I was curious, what did you learn back then that kind of changed how you ran your business now?
I think, you have to plan better. You have to be more thoughtful about what it is. What are you trying to do? And so where can I spend my time? I think if you pick something to do consistently, like we're talking about, whether it's farming, whether it's open houses, whether it's whatever the activities are going to be that you can do consistently, you'll become known for that. And you'll gain experience at that. And anybody is better the 500th time they do something than the first time. So whatever it is that you can do consistently is going to help. I also think you have to, and I'm sure people are starting to feel it, but I mean, every single conversation you have with someone that has a question about real estate or is talking about real estate or is a lead, so to speak, is super, super high value important. And so, I did, work any possible deal that you can. So if you have an opportunity at something and it's cheap and inexpensive and maybe a little out of your market, dig in there and figure everything you can about it, and do it as best you can and learn, because you're going to learn something. I think you have to be a little careful at the same time that you want to try and chase any opportunity you can. I still think you should have some focus on who are the people I'm going to talk to consistently, because I want to grow this. Like we talked about at the beginning, with singles, brick at a time.
Yeah.
Strategize on that. Do I want to talk to doctors consistently? Do I want to talk to this neighborhood consistently? Am I going to be the open house person? Am I going to do just video? Whatever it is, figure it out, commit to it, and get really good at it. And I think spending time on something consistently is how you get good at something. And it's years, really. I mean, I feel, it doesn't happen often. I sometimes don't get a listing when I get a phone call. But a newer agent has to understand, especially on the listing side, that you're up against someone like me that, on the listing side. Probably a place for newer agents too is maybe on the buying side, maybe with the right team, could be a good way to sort of jumpstart it. I'm not a huge fan of some of the prototypical team arrangements, but I think for someone new who needs to learn, if they understand what they're trying to do for themselves, that could be a good place to start. Open house, some maybe getting onto a team where there's some open house opportunities and a lot of chances to talk to people. I think that could be a good thing. I think it's good. I certainly worked a lot more buyers earlier in my career, and I think that's important because you have to get out and see real estate. You can't go to a condo project and show a building and not know where the pool is, So, learn what it is that you're selling and talking about.
And yeah, I think it's interesting too when you look at like your market, Panama. Like I feel like you have to experience things that like some markets may not experience. Being a vacation market, you have just yearly fluctuations in comparison to like some people. There is fluctuation in markets like Tampa and stuff, but like it's different. And I think like, for example, homes over there sit longer, so you have to treat them differently because they may not sell in 30 days. They sell in like 300 or like 180 or 90. I was curious, like, what did you learn being in a vacation market in comparison to like a normal market?
No, I like the question. They're just different dynamics that I think affect any market. So the more you spend time in those, you learn those. I realized in the Gulfront condo market exclusively, for years and years and years, we were a drive-to destination for 3 or 4 states regionally. The prototypical buyer would put 20% down on a condo, less if they could. At some points, there were loan products that let you put 10% down, 0% down. They were going to finance 80%, but they needed the rental income to carry most of that. That was the prototypical buyer for a long time. And people have done really well here. My coach is actually in St. Pete Beach, and so we talk about it a lot. We have the vast majority of our buildings are rental buildings. There's only 3 that aren't. And so rental revenue, we've been a big rental market. It's huge. People have done really, really well. That's changing a little bit. We have a project here branded Margaritaville, one of the 55 and up communities that's been selling for a few years now. And they've sold over 1,000 homes in 2 years to buyers from 49 states. And all of a sudden, where Tampa, Miami, South Florida was those markets are so well known. We've really not been known very well until pretty recently. And all of a sudden we have buyers coming from other markets. So it's interesting to sort of pay attention to the shift of what's happening the same things are well, and even things are becoming less important, or different things are becoming important for different. These other buyers coming in don't need the rental revenue. They see the pretty beaches, they see what's coming with all this development. They see this part of Florida blowing up. We're now starting to show up in like Zelman and Associates just brokered a deal here for a regional builder to sell to a national builder. We have national builders coming in the market. It's an interesting place to be. So what I learned in the vacation market originally by just spending time in it's even changing now. So back to what we were just talking about a few minutes ago, it's just spending time in it. You learn about it. People want and look for different things in a second home property than they do their primary. And the more you do it, you figure those things out. It's same thing. People are looking for something specific in this neighborhood, whether it's a school district or amenities or whatever. The more you spend time there, you hear those conversations with those people. It's just time, man. I think if people have, especially right now, is I think a great opportunity to build a real estate career. You probably have a lot of agents leaving, and if you'll sit there and do the work, and I don't think it's a grind, but if you embrace the idea of the grind of just every day, do a little bit or learn a little bit more about where you are and how you do it, all of a sudden, you blink and it's 10 years later and you're doing pretty well.
Yeah, 100% agree. Now's the time to kind of like double down, be present, show up. And it's interesting that you said that about like Panama City too, because I see it in Tampa, like 30A is becoming like just a popular destination just in general. People are like searching it, Googling it, just curious about like, why is it so popular?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And we, 30A 5, 6, 7 years ago, you were a $5 million house on the Gulf, maybe a little bit more. You're $20 million houses on the Gulf now. And if you were in this market 10 years ago, I mean, people didn't think of this part of Florida like that. We've heard of people selling out of the Hamptons to come to Alice Beach. It's a really interesting thing, especially there's this one company here, the St. Joe company is a publicly traded company that was a timber company that has so much land. They have like a 40 or 50 year sector plan in our market with their land holdings just in our little part of the area. And a lot of those things I rattled off earlier that are coming are just they're involved in that. They donated the land to move an airport years ago because they were so forward thinking with what's happening. And it's exciting because a lot of places in South Florida, it's so dense and there aren't many areas to develop. We have a lot of land and a lot of areas to develop that are very close to the beach still. And we have a lot of people's attention. And so it's a fun place to be it's a fun place to be for real estate, especially for me, having been here for 20 years and having seen cycles.
Yeah.
It'll be cool.
So is that like, I was curious, do you think the reason people move from the Hamptons there, because it's kind of a similar lifestyle, you get the land, you get the beach, it feels a little more local than like going to Miami, it's comparison?
I think a few things are going on. We all like new, and I think there are a lot of parts of Florida people have been going to for a long time. Generations have been going to parts of Florida for a long time. And we're pretty new, especially if you start on 30A for a certain demographic. Man, it's really cool. It's really interesting. It's getting pretty busy. So now what's happening is that momentum is just sort of spreading along the coast, and we're right next door to that. I do business over there too. We're right next door to that though now, and we were sort of the the redheaded stepchild a little bit to that market. People in that market wouldn't come over to this market not so long ago, but now you step out onto the beach and you see it's the same sugar white sands that everybody else is on. It's the same, not the exact same feel and amenities, but it's changing. And it's getting a lot of attention.
Nice. And real quick, if people want like just more, they want to like message you or check out what you're doing or follow you, where should they go?
A couple places. My direct cell, easiest one is 850-290-0417. Call, text is fine. The website is durangroupfl.com. My YouTube channel, I think it's Craig Duran Real Estate, but if you just Googled, I think it's Craig Duran Real Estate. But that's my number. Email address, craig@durangroupfl.com. But the website's really the hub of a lot of what we do.
Nice. And I was just curious, kind of like looking back now, you mentioned it a little earlier, like your career in jazz and music, like looking back, is there anything that you learned through that music that you kind of still use or enjoy today?
Oh yeah, man. I think, well, I'm still playing a lot of actual music, and I'm actually a lot more recently, so it's cool. But yeah, I think I was taught, I just gave this analogy the other day. I was taught in school, you took a typical jazz quintet of 5 guys, or girls, and we were taught, listen to the song again, and listen to just the trumpet player. Listen again, listen to just this instrument, like that. And then listen to the song again. And what happens is you start to hear that some parts of the song, this part comes forward, some parts of the song, this part comes forward. And things go like that. I think in my business, sometimes it's this activity brings more of the business, and this activity doesn't bring as much. And then sometimes it's different. And then sometimes it comes from here. And then sometimes it may come from here, but it's all feeding the same thing. And so if you keep back to what we've been talking about, if you just keep consistent at the things, you're building, then you start, you get a little business over here, and then some comes over here, and then some comes over here. Well, that all adds up. And I think, and you can't do 10 things when you're starting out. You just pick 1 or 2 and get good at those, and then go to the next thing.
I think that's such a great analogy, and I want to thank you for sharing and just contributing and being a source of value for the industry. So, and leading by example too.
Yeah, man, I appreciate the call. It was nice to meet you, and good chatting with you today.
Nice to meet you as well.